things happen in everyday life to kind of shape how we see things, see the world. I mean, there are times when events really kind of profoundly change us. And other times, well, we have questions. And maybe if the questions go unanswered, we have doubts. With that in mind, I want to talk a little bit about last Sunday's gospel and this Sunday's gospel. Okay? You might remember, say, the experience of Jesus last Sunday in the gospel, walking into town near Jerusalem with the disciples, and they see this blind man. Turns out the townspeople said he had been blind since birth. He was by the side of the road. And what did the disciples ask? Inquiring minds want to know. The disciples asked, well, was it his sin that caused his blindness, or was his parents' sin that made him blind? And Jesus said to the disciples, it was neither his sin nor his parents' sin. His blindness will be an opportunity for the strength of God to be seen. And you remember that last week. Jesus healed the blind man. He restored his sight. He restored his sight. The gospel today, we met our old friends Martha and Mary. Remember, the last time we saw them, well, they were in the home. They were hosting Jesus and some of the disciples. And Martha was sitting at the feet of Jesus, listening intently to him. Mary's working in the kitchen. Jesus, send Mary in to help me in the kitchen. Remember that? And Jesus told her, Mary's chosen the better half. Come and sit and listen. Okay? Now, it's Martha is the one who comes out to Jesus, meets him on the road, and says to him, Lord, if only you'd been here, my brother wouldn't have died. And then Martha and Jesus get into this really deep conversation. And it turns out that Martha, who was in the kitchen before, now this is her moment to shine. She's the one who makes her profession of faith. He asks her, do you believe your brother will live again? She says, yes, he will be risen on the last day. He'll be resurrected. And I have come to believe that you are the Son of God. You are the one who's coming into the world. Martha believes. And then they sent for Mary. She says the same thing. She says, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Events touch our lives. Martha and Mary, are they people who have their beliefs shaken by things? Well, hard to say. I mean, think of your own experiences. Martha and Mary are dealing with the death of their brother Lazarus. How many times has a death in the family, or a loss of a job, or things going on in the community really kind of troubled us or shaken us? How many times have we had important questions in our lives that have gone unanswered? And maybe that helps to plant the seeds of doubt. We worry about things like that. Well, Jesus goes to the tomb where Lazarus is, and Martha sings out, oh, no, don't open the tomb. He's been dead for 4 days. There'll be a stench. He's been dead for 4 days. It's going to smell bad. And Jesus reminds Mary, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? And then kind of remembering, that connection with the blind man's story. Jesus telling the disciples, this man's blindness will be the way that God's glory will be brought to shine. You'll see the strength of God in that healing. Now we see Jesus ready to do much the same thing, because they're all about to see the glory of God. Jesus prays to his Father. I love the way that John puts this in the gospel. Father, I thank you for hearing me. I know you always hear me, but because of the crowd here, I say this, that they may believe that you sent me. And Lazarus is raised from the dead. Wow. Story of the disciples, the blind man's parents, they kind of come to know that Jesus has healed them. The blind man himself, what's he do once he's healed? Strengthened by Jesus, given his sight back, he goes and he witnesses on behalf of Jesus. You heard that give and take last week in the gospel. The Pharisees tried to diminish what had happened to the blind man. He was having nothing of that. He said he was healed by a prophet. He believed in him. And at the end of the gospel last week, the blind man is so moved by his personal encounter with Jesus, who comes back to him, he goes and he proclaims, he witnesses on his behalf, Jesus' behalf. Martha and Mary, what did they do? Well, hey folks, When you come here on Easter, you'll hear that it's Mary is the one who early in the morning goes to the tomb. She is the one who finds that the tomb is empty. She is the one who goes back to Peter and to John and the others and tells them that Jesus is missing. He must be risen. Mary is a witness to the resurrection, and she shares the good news. They have been healed and strengthened in their faith. Their doubts are gone. Here it is 2,000 years later. How about us? Everyday events of life that could discourage us, trouble us, be seeds of doubt. The questions we have when maybe we falter a little bit, let's bring it to the Lord. Let the Lord fill us with faith, take away our doubts, remind us and strengthen us about who we are. And like the blind man, and like Martha and Mary, we can go out and be Jesus' people in the world. We can witness to his presence. We can serve our sisters and brothers. We live in a world that's filled with tension and violence. Look at all the war going on around us. Look at the ways in which people routinely and habitually ignore each other in need. The things we do for our sisters and brothers, whether they are sick or hungry or thirsty, or they are cold or in need of comfort and consolation. We can be Jesus' people in the world. Let's turn our doubts, our worries, our questions over to the Lord. He will fill us. He will fill us. After all, Jesus is telling us, did I not tell you, if you believe, you'll see the glory of God? We can be God's instruments in the world. All we need to do is just look to the Lord and place our trust in him.